Hello, everybody. Charles from GMAT Ninja here. Welcome to episode 3 of our GMAT Clarity series. So ask me absolutely anything about the GMAT. Today, we're going to focus on non-math data insights. And this is something that too many of you are not spending enough time on. We see your scores. We know what's going on. We see a lot of score reports. This is one of the kind of most ignored parts of the GMAT. But yeah, we're going to talk about just how important it is, how often non-quant questions appear on data insights, how to get faster, all of that good stuff. We've compiled a bunch of questions that you guys have asked on GMAT Club. If you are watching this live, please, 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 I am counting on you to ask more questions. This is for you. You guys drive the bus. I've got a bunch of stuff I want to talk about today that is derived from questions you guys have asked on the forum. But if people watching live have more things you want to ask, I will deviate from that plan very, very happily. So I'm counting on your participation. If you're watching live and you're not asking questions and giving your answers, I'll come to your house and cry. And I'm an ugly crier. It's kind of swell up. It's kind of like a squished blueberry with all the wrinkles. It's terrible. You don't want that. So please let me know what you think of stuff. All right, here's the questions, and I'll explain these silly numbers on the board in just a moment. So questions we pulled from the forum that you guys have asked about non-math data insights. Hey, quant's more common anyway, right? No, we'll talk about that with stats in just a moment. How common are verbal data sufficiency questions? There aren't many in the official guides. That one's a little more nuanced. We'll get into that. How much should you be focused on non-math data sufficiency specifically? Hey, these verbal DS questions feel easy, but I keep missing them. What's going on? We have an answer. And then you've got these questions where it's just a mountain of text. So two-part analysis, multi-source reasoning in particular. It's like critical reasoning, but times 2 or 3 sometimes is the feeling. And it's like, how do I get through this in time? So we're going to talk about tools for doing that. We'll talk about 2 different kinds of heavy text data insights questions. So we'll talk about ones that are very much like critical reasoning. And we'll talk about ones that where kind of drawing a picture is really going to help you out. We kind of call those logic games. We'll get into that. It'll be kind of fun. Number 5, not really a question, but we hear it all the time. These flowcharts are kind of weird. What do I do with them? And finally, the big question that everybody has on data insights: how do I get faster? Data insights is supremely time pressured. Almost everybody struggles to get through data insights on time. So I want to wrap up once we kind of get through some of the nuts and bolts of non-math data insights. I want to talk about, okay, more broadly, how do you apply some of these tools to get faster, to get more efficient on data insights in general, and specifically on these non-math ones. All right, with that, numbers. Because I'm a sicko, I've gone through all 1,193 data insights questions in massive detail, often more than once. And that's all of the official data insights questions that have been in print since they created this version of the GMAT. So that includes the online question banks, the official guide, the data insights guide, the MBA.com test, all that good stuff. So painstaking analysis of it. Before I talk about kind of what that tells us about how important the non-math data insights is, I do want to say most of you guys are massively over-studying quant at the expense of other things. This little metric here, I went through our YouTube channel, so the GMAT Ninja YouTube channel, and we have comprehensive free courses on everything over there. And you know, a lot of people say, "Oh, you guys are awesome at verbal, and you're great at verbal." Lots of people teach math. You know, we probably focus on verbal more than most companies. Here's the funny thing: our 20 most watched videos, 15 of them are quant. Only 5 total are verbal data insights and other stuff. So 2 verbal videos, that's it among the top 20. 2 data insights videos, that's it among our top 20. And then 1 that's kind of a general how to get started in the GMAT. My point is, most people start studying for the GMAT and they go, oh yeah, quant, why? It's satisfying. You feel like you're learning. And the problem is, yeah, it's 1 section out of 3, and it's maybe half of data insights, maybe a third, that's it. The other half to 2/3 is other stuff. Coming back to our analysis, 1,193 questions, painfully analyzed. So 5 question types on data insights. Multi-source reasoning, it's about half quant-based, half non-quant-based. Table analysis, half and half, almost exactly. Graphical interpretation, half and half, almost exactly. 2-part analysis, half and half, almost exactly. The only outlier is data sufficiency when you look at the official materials, where it's only about 10, 15, maybe 20% that are non-math based. That's it. But what GMAT has actually said to me, their psychometricians have said to me is, yeah, over time, you're going to see more of these in the official guides. So reality is, it seems to be the case that about half your data insights is quant-based, about half is non-quant-based. So please don't ignore this stuff. It's really important. The other thing we notice as we go through statistics on the forum, we see as you do those timers, how much, to what percentage of people are missing questions. You guys perform a lot worse on verbal-based data insights than on quant-based. So critical, overlooked. If you're watching this, thank you for being here. I'm probably preaching to the choir now, but absolutely crucial, very much overlooked, not a sexy thing to study, but if you can get really good processes for dealing with the non-quant data insights, the verbal-ish, the logic-based data insights, boy, it's going to do a lot for you, and it's going to make you stand out above your peers who are not studying this, and we've got tons of data to back that idea. Okay, with that, so we just focused on these two. So how common is this stuff? Great. Question number 3. Hey, these verbal DS questions, not very many of them out there in the official materials. We have reason to think there's more of them on the test, closer to half and half on the test than in the official materials. But hey, they feel easy. Why do I keep missing them? Well, we've got stats. You guys keep missing them. I have a pretty strong theory as to why. It's things we see out of our students. So I'm going to go ahead and toss a question here on the board, or on the screen, I guess. Not that button. There you go. Okay, live group. I know there's not very many of you. It's Friday, Friday morning in the US, holiday time. But for those of you watching live, please let me know what you think. As soon as you get an answer, please toss it into the chat. That helps make it better for everybody else, helps me answer your questions. Go ahead and take a moment. Okay, this is great. Live group, you're giving me lots to work with, so hugely appreciated. Thank you, guys. Okay, and I just realized that as I'm seeing some of the responses from the live group, some of you might not know what data sufficiency is. I'm not going to go through it in massive detail here, but if you are totally new to data sufficiency, please check out some of our other videos here on GMAT Club's channel or on the GMAT Ninja channel dealing specifically with data sufficiency. I'm also not going to rehash kind of why I do this, but if you are looking at me crossing out letters here and you have no idea what's going on, please check out those videos. I don't want to bore everybody with a kind of a basics of data sufficiency thing. 5 answer choices for those of you who are new and are trying to hang. So A is statement 1 alone is sufficient. B, statement 2 alone is sufficient. C, you need both. D, either alone is sufficient. And E, you just can't solve this. Okay, what should generally be expected when you venture into an area that surrounds road closure? Statement 1 says nothing about road closures, right? Hey, there's a lot of people at this event and there's going to be shuttle buses. Well, that has nothing to do with road closures. So pretty easy to eliminate A and D right off the bat. And again, if this little widget is unfamiliar to you, check out some of our other videos. Statement 2, with a major G20 event happening in this certain spot, and there's reports of road closures in the area, there's a strong likelihood of congestion. All right. The temptation is to say, yeah, that's sufficient, and the answer is B, and I'm done, because this is giving us a scenario where it's like, hey, over by this stadium tonight, there's a big thing happening. There's road closures, so there's a likelihood of congestion because of the road closures. Easy, easy, easy. Here's the thing. What's really important, non-quant-based, verbal-based data insights, sometimes this hinges on one word, and anybody who gets this question wrong, you kind of missed a keyword, a key modifier. What is it? Generally, what should generally be expected if you venture into areas surrounding road closure? Real life, it might be common sense. You know, there might be congestion. Get reality out of the way of your data sufficiency. It has nothing to do with it. What do we know based on the facts we're given? As you look at statement 2, is it telling us what generally happens when there's a road closure? No, it's saying there's a major event happening near a specific stadium. Major event, specific stadiums, strong likelihood of congestion in that spot at this time because of this event. Does that mean that there's generally congestion near road closures? We can't conclude that, not at all, because B is focused on a very, very specific instance. Can you conclude from B whether or not there is generally congestion near road closures? Not at all. And for that reason, it is not B. And even when you combine statement 1 and statement 2 together, it is not C, and your answer here is E. And if you are a normal human, and most of you probably are, your reaction is like, well, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. Like, what do you mean? I know what happens around a road closure. And obviously, if there's a road closure, there's more likely to be congestion. Yeah, but that is not what's said. What's said is, in this specific instance, in this specific place, with this specific event, there's a strong likelihood of road closure. Does that mean we can expect that in general in all scenarios? Not at all. One scenario does not prove your rule that there is generally congestion. All right, friends, welcome to the wonderful world of the GMAT. Welcome to verbal data sufficiency. And if you've watched any of our critical reasoning or reading content, particularly critical reasoning, a lot of what I focus on is, hey, why are those of you who are perfectly strong readers, why do good readers struggle on critical reasoning sometimes? Well, usually it's not because your logic is flawed. Usually it's because you're missing one word somewhere. It's usually a misread. 75, 80% of errors I've seen in whatever I'm up to now, 26 years of teaching, most of the errors, overwhelming majority of the errors are from misreading, misinterpreting somewhere, not because you got obliterated by logic or fundamentally obliterated by something that's too hard for you. It's that one little modifier. Examples I love to give for critical reasoning. Your conclusion could be X is a solution to our problem. X is the best solution. X is the only solution. X is a great solution. I changed that one word, best, only, great, good. And it completely changes that conclusion, right? Same deal here. What should generally be expected? In general, in most cases. We're not given anything about most cases. We're only given one case. So that's the type of reading you want to do. And often when we see students who go, hey, I don't understand why I'm missing this. Feels easy. Why am I missing it? It's that you're not dialed into exactly what you're being asked. Is this reasonable? We can argue. Is this annoying? Absolutely. But this is the game on verbal data sufficiency. Be really attuned to those little nuances of language in the question itself. And that is overwhelmingly the difference between people who struggle on these and people who do really, really well. Okay. Yeah, good question here. And I don't know if there's a good answer. So thank you for this. If we consider the statement without the word generally, will the answer change? Here's the thing is two thoughts here. I think once you remove the word generally from this question, I actually think it becomes ambiguous. And then it's not really clear what they're going after, what should be expected when you venture into areas surrounding road closure. Are we talking about in general, or are we talking about specific ones? So the bottom line, it's a great question. They wouldn't write the question that way. They just wouldn't. They put the generally in there on purpose, and those little tweaks of language. And there's often a temptation when you're getting used to the GMAT to say, well, what if they write it differently next time? Well, they won't. I mean, of course, all questions are different, but they're not going to, there's a reason they include the word generally. That's kind of what they're going after, is your ability to really hone in on exactly what's being asked, and not kind of letting your own ideas about road closures influence the exact words you're given. So great question, but I think in this case, they wouldn't omit the word generally because I think it makes the question, frankly, less clear and less fair. So awesome question. I appreciate that. Okay. So that is Verbal Data Sufficiency 101. If we had more time, I'd do more of this. If you guys really enjoy this particular topic, let us know in the comments, let us know in the forum, and maybe we'll do a full video on just this. Okay. Next topic. Question number 4. How do you get through the mountain of text? The mountain of text. The big blob of text. Would drawing a picture help? And we're going to go at this from a couple different directions here. Oops. There's 2 flavors broadly of kind of the 2-part analysis, multi-source reasoning, where you get a lot of text. Sometimes graphical interpretation even has a really long chunk of text. There's kind of 2 flavors, and we're going to kind of approach them one by one. One is, this is basically critical reasoning, but they've made it more intimidating, not necessarily different, just more intimidating. And we'll talk about tools for kind of getting your mind right and battling your way through those, even though they're longer, slower, feel harder. They're not necessarily. So we'll do one of those. And then we'll talk about what I kind of like to call logic games, and that's not a technical term, not a term that test makers use. But questions where you're kind of given something and it helps you to draw a picture. We'll get into all that. So first one I'm going to give you, yeah, it's kind of critical reasoning-ish, but it's 2-part analysis, and it's more text and more details, and you got to do more stuff, and it's not that much fun. So go have fun. If you're watching this live, again, please let me know what you think. If you're stuck, if there's something you're really struggling on, please let us know in the comments, and I can address it, and it'll help everybody watching. All right, I'm going to shut my mouth. Enjoy. All right, if you're not watching, excuse me, if you're not watching this live, feel free to hit that pause button. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting great stuff from the live group. So thank you everybody for tossing in your responses. And I'm seeing some really productive misconceptions here, and I really like it. Okay. So critical reasoning, I'm going to treat this as critical reasoning at first. Really, I'm going to treat it like critical reasoning, period. Because essentially what this is you've got two different passages, right? You've got Marco up there, and then you've got Fatima. Fatima doesn't say a whole lot. It's pretty short. She basically just says, nah, I'm skeptical. But a lot of the key to critical reasoning, being really great at it, is making sure you think structurally and you think, okay, what is the heart of this little passage? Is there a conclusion? If there's a conclusion, you better get it exactly in the author's words. As soon as you tweak something, you get yourself into trouble. And then go, okay, why? Do I understand the support for it? Okay, so I'm going to start with Marco, and then we'll kind of get into the rest of the nuances of the question, because really what we're doing is we treat Marco's little statement here as kind of like its own little passage. Let's think structurally. Does he have a conclusion? If so, what is it? What's the supporting evidence? Am I clear about it being the author's words and not my words? If you paraphrase, you get into trouble. Just like we saw in that last one, you drop the word generally, you're toast, right? Same idea here, critical reasoning or critical reasoning like things on data insights. So we're gonna deal with this with Marco, talk about Fatima briefly. She doesn't say a whole lot, but it's kind of like two little passages. We want to deal with those structurally, be precise with the language. And then really, we just kind of have two questions in one. It's strengthening what Marco says, and then it's strengthening what Fatima says. It's really just two strengthened questions in one, or you could think of it as strengthen Marco's statement and weaken it with Fatima. So it's just kind of like having two critical reasoning questions in one, and that's all that is. So it requires a little more patience and a little bit more kind of discipline to your process, but that's it. Otherwise, same thing you've been doing on verbal. If you're good at verbal, you should be good at this. All right. So what is Marco saying? Like, what's really the heart of, what's his point? Does he have a conclusion? Well, very, very cleanly here, that last sentence of his little statement is his conclusion. So something else, meaning not the increasing aridity of the climate, not the increasing dryness of the climate. So something else would have to account for the extinction of these giant kangaroos 46,000 years ago. Two parts to his conclusion. Something else must have accounted for their extinction. And second, the best candidate is predation by humans. So nice Australians, they've got their giant kangaroo on the Barbie, got their giant kangaroo meat pies, drinking their VB and Fosters. I love Australia, in case you can't tell. Anyway, okay, so there's his conclusion. What's his support? How does he get there? Well, he's kind of saying two things. One is that, well, those giant kangaroos fed mostly on saltbush, not their entire diet, but it was mostly, so the majority. And saltbush thrives in arid climates. So, okay, if it thrives in arid climates and the climate was getting more arid, then the problem wasn't that their food supply was going away, because saltbush does just fine as it's getting drier. So it must be something else. Okay, briefly, what has Fatima said? She doesn't have a super clear conclusion. She's just saying the argument alone is unlikely to satisfy researchers in the field. Have you found any other evidence to bolster your conclusion? It's really just, are you sure, dude? So that argument alone is not likely to satisfy. So the question's saying, select Marco for the statement that most justifies his assertions. So essentially strengthening. Which one of these is going to strengthen that conclusion? That's going to be your first column. Second column, select Fatima for the statement that, if true, most justifies her skepticism. So basically, it's just going to be something that weakens Marco's conclusion, makes it less likely that he's correct. So really just a fairly straightforward strengthen and weaken thing. It's just what's really annoying as you do this on an actual test with the timer beating in your face is you feel like you're doing two questions in one, and you kind of are. But that's the frustrating thing. Otherwise, this is just critical reasoning. Okay. Thank you, live folks, because I'm seeing a ton of variety, and it's fantastic. It tells me that we picked a good question for you. Okay. I'm going to, I should blow this up now. Okay. Statement one, giant kangaroos became extinct during a period that was less arid than previous periods they endured. Okay. So what does that do to Marco's conclusion here? So if they went extinct when it was less arid than previous periods they endured. So we're saying that, well, the climate was getting more arid. We know that from the passage, right? Increasing aridity of the climate. But it actually wasn't so bad. It wasn't as bad as it had been before. They had endured things that were worse in terms of the arid climate, the dry climate. Would that support what he's saying? Yeah, absolutely. This supports the idea that really the fact that the climate was more arid has nothing to do with their extinction, because it had been even drier before and they didn't go extinct then. So why would they go extinct now? Couldn't be the arid climate. So right there, right off the bat, I think we've got our winner, and that's going to be A. Now, in the interest of, yeah, I'll go through some of these because I think we've seen people pick almost everything else in the live group. So I'm going to go through each of these for just Marco. Statement 2. Many researchers believe humans first arrived in Australia around 40,000 years ago. Well, that actually weakens his statement, right? Because what it's saying in the passage is that these giant kangaroos, they went extinct 46,000 years ago. He's saying the best candidate is predation by humans. Again, those crazy Aussies eating their kangaroo meat pies, which are delicious, by the way. I don't know about giant kangaroos, but regular sized kangaroos. Anyway, if statement 2 is true and humans arrived 40,000 years ago, they weren't there yet. So this is going to weaken his conclusion, not strengthen it. Because if humans weren't there, then how could it have been predation by humans that caused the trouble? So it's going to weaken it. That isn't the answer for Marco, but man, that is a really good candidate for Fatima. Because if you're going to be skeptical of this, that's a really good reason to be skeptical. Couldn't be predation by humans if the humans weren't there. Now, if you are really confident that A and B, respectively, are the right answers here, you could stop. That'd be okay. Be okay. Usually what I prefer to do on critical reasoning, certainly reading comprehension and these data insights questions that are critical reasoning or reading comp-ish, I would go ahead and make sure you can eliminate all of these. Because what if I'm just being a goofball and I fell in love with this one? This one had a number. And sometimes you flip them around and go, oh, well, that means the humans were there first. It's easy to make a mistake with it. Read it as 50,000 instead of 40,000. I think good hygiene is cross-elimination. Find 4 wrong answers, not 1 right answer. Let's go ahead and go through each of these. So statement C, approximately 60 different species in Australia died out in that wave of extinctions around 46,000 years ago. Okay, but that has nothing to do with the why. So just because other species went extinct, that doesn't tell us whether it was humans or whether it was the climate. So because the issue here is why, whether it was humans or the climate, C just tells us more species died. Well, that might mean that humans ate a lot of species, might mean that the climate killed a lot of species. Who knows? C has nothing to do with it. We can eliminate it. By the way, we can eliminate it for Fatima too, because it doesn't weaken Marco's assertions either. It has nothing to do with it. So we can eliminate C for both, because essentially what we have here is strengthen Marco's statement, weaken Marco's statement. C does neither because it has nothing to do with why they went extinct. D, fossils of kangaroos show evidence that those animals' diets routinely included plants other than saltbush. Some of you were tempted by this, and that's awesome. Notice the phrasing in that passage. So their diet consisted mostly of saltbush. It doesn't say entirely of saltbush, mostly. So just because there were other things in their diet doesn't really have any bearing on any of this, because we already knew that. We already knew that their diet included other things besides just saltbush. So D is actually totally irrelevant. We know that there were other plants there, or at least other things. So D doesn't do anything, has nothing to do with whether the climate or the humans did it. So really for both of these, we can eliminate D as well. It's not going to strengthen or weaken it. E, several types of megafauna larger than the giant kangaroo went extinct. Same, very similar to C. So just because even larger animals went extinct, the giant marsupial tigers, terrifying. We don't know if it was the humans, doesn't help us. Just because larger animals went extinct doesn't mean we know whether it was the humans or the climate to blame. So we can get rid of E. Just one more left. We can circle back to A and see if it had anything to do with Fatima. Giant kangaroos went extinct during a period that was less arid than previous periods they endured. Well, obviously that strengthens Marco's statement. It wouldn't weaken it. So we know it's not A. And our winners are going to be A for Marco and B for Fatima. All right. Bottom line here. Notice that this is really not different than what you would do in any other critical reasoning. It just requires a little bit more patience. And I think one of the biggest score killers we see over and over and over again really applies to everything, quant and verbal as well. But I think data insights, it's more acute. We see people coming in who are scoring 5 or 8 or 10 points lower on data insights than they are on quant and verbal. I mean, that's not uncommon. And a lot of the culprit for it is it's timing, right? And data insights is time pressured for everybody. I said that in video 2 in this series. Hey, we've got data, got really clear data from GMAT that says people struggle more with the timing on data insights than quant and verbal. Okay. Now, what does that do to you? What you should do is let go of a handful of questions you really struggle on and focus on being really disciplined on the rest. What you don't want to do is just speed up a little bit, because when you speed up a little bit, what happens? I'm going to come back to our friend here with the road closures. You miss the word generally because you're so jacked up about time, and you spend 15% less time by reading it faster. What happens? You miss one word, and you save 15% of your time, but you missed a question that was easy for you, potentially. Same idea here as we get to something like this. It's a little bit longer than critical reasoning. You also have more time on average on data insights. You get a little bit more time. Most people do data sufficiency a little bit faster on average. You've got a little bit more time, 20 questions instead of 23 that you have on verbal. So you can afford to take a breath, be systematic, get that conclusion exactly in the author's words, in this case, because there is one. Think through the why. If you don't do that, whatever time you spend after might be a waste of time. And if you start rushing through this, that's when you misread one word, mostly saltbush, for example. You miss the dates, maybe, some little detail. So one way to think about it is there's two ways to do a question. You do it systematically, you do it thoroughly, you have a good, strong process that you practice doing every single time. By the way, I would say that about quantiverbal as well. Or you let it go. But don't have to and start rushing through. That's when the test starts crushing you. All right. What now? Okay, so there we go. It's A, B, neat. Okay, next one. I'm not going to say a lot about this. Table analysis. So we kind of tend to think tables, they're math, Excel, math. About half of table analysis are non-quant or verbal based. So this is one of them. And it's one that I think is similar to the last two in a broad sense. It is one that a lot of people get wrong, and it's not fundamentally that hard. If you miss it, you probably misread something. I'll shut my mouth. Enjoy. All right, pause if you need to, if you're not watching live. Live group, keep tossing your answers in there because it's actually really interesting seeing your thoughts on it. This is great. Okay. Is this hard? Here's the thing. Data insights in particular, I think especially these verbal-ish ones, what feels hard and what is hard, not connected. When we talk about difficulty on the GMAT, it's determined empirically, it's determined statistically. Those experimental questions you see on the test, if you guys struggle on them, it will be rated a more difficult question than if people get them right. There's a whole statistical thing that goes on under there. My point is, a lot of the questions I picked for this video are ones that I don't think look hard to most people. I don't think this one looks hard. Straightforward, nothing crazy. But the error rate's through the roof. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a large number. It's close to half, something like that. And I'm seeing that at a live group. I'm seeing a lot of mistakes, and it's really cool because I think this kind of cuts to the heart of what are we really doing here. And what we're really doing here is not missing a word or two in that blob of text. That's it. Those of you who missed it probably missed a word or two in the blob of text. It's really easy to do. It's easy to kind of blow off the text, focus on the chart, table, graph, table in this case, focus on the visual, and not pay enough attention to the words. And that's, I think, what's going on here. Okay, so what do we know? I'm gonna go ahead and bring this a little bit bigger for a second. So he is gonna only donate, so he will not donate to charities unless for both finances and accountability, it is at least as highly rated as any of the charities in the same category. So it has to be the best or tied for the best in its own category for both finances and accountability for him to even consider it. Okay, so what does that mean here? We can kind of take these one by one. Community. Well, Together We Will is better for finances, but the other one, Civica, is better for accountability. So he is not going to donate to anything in community. There's no one charity that checks the box for both, so no there. Environment. Yeah, in this case, so you've got 3 environment charities, and I already sorted this so that you sorted it by category. You could sort it some other way if you're doing it in real life. So we know that Green World is tied for the best in finances. We know that Green World is also tied for the best in accountability. So he might donate to Green World. Might. I'll come back to that in a moment, and that's where a lot of the mistakes come in. Might. And the third one for health. So you've got that last one, Healthy Hearts. It's better in finance, and it's tied for accountability. So we'll say Healthy Hearts. Great. Here's where some of you went off the rails. This next part. Gordon may have other criteria that would prevent him from donating to one or more of these charities. What does that mean? So it means that based on the criteria, based on the table, there's 2 charities, Green World and Healthy Hearts, that are eligible, that he could donate to, but he might not. There might be some other criteria. He doesn't like the way the managing director makes oatmeal, doesn't like the color of the managing director's shoes. Who knows? That would prevent him from donating. So yeah, these are 2 that are eligible. He might donate to those 2, might donate to 1, might donate to none. Notice it took me about 20 seconds maybe to think through that and just go, let me make sure I've got all the criteria, and let me make sure I didn't drop some piece of it. Now we've got the whole picture. Maybe Green World, maybe Healthy Hearts, that's it. And now from here, it's pretty straightforward. So is he gonna donate to at least 1? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. So we don't know if that's correct. Donates to at most 3. Well, we know that that's not correct, right? So he's not going to donate. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. I have that wrong. Donates to at most 3. So he's not going to donate to that many, right? So at most 3. Yeah, that's right. So that's correct. He's not going to donate to more than 3. And he will not donate to a charity in the community category. That is correct. Everybody having fun? So it is just that. It is just that little bit of nuance. That's it. That's all we're really talking about on these, is making sure that you go back to the text, read it one more time, make sure you catch every little detail, and that is it. Okay. So, all right, seeing some interesting comments coming in. At most 1. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, guys. I misread that because I've got it so small on my screen on the preview. At most 1. I thought something felt wrong there. I had it as most 3. I actually wrote that down wrong. My bad. So at most 1, that is not correct. because he could donate to 2. So thank you, everybody live. Thank you so much for catching that. I make mistakes too. So yeah, it said at most 1. And that's going to be not correct. I thought that felt weird. I was like, I don't know, didn't say that. So yeah, statement 2, I had that transcribed wrong as you guys were working on it. So yeah, donates to at most 1. And that is not correct because he could donate to 2. All right, just illustrating the value of reading really carefully. I obviously didn't do it. Do as I say, not as I do. All right, guys. And there you go. Okay, next one. So this last one was kind of a criteria-based one where it's just keeping your information really straight, making sure you're paying attention to the passage. This one is kind of more of a pure, what I would call logic games. And don't worry too much about that term. It's not something most GMAT people use, certainly not something that test makers use. But it's about keeping your information straight and not being afraid to draw a picture. So yes, precision of language, same thing we've been working on the first 3. If you read something quickly, you don't save yourself that much time versus reading it carefully and thoughtfully. And if you miss a word, you're in trouble. This has that element. Then it also has another element of you've got to kind of play with this stuff a little bit. So going to take a couple minutes on this one, and then we'll draw some pictures, or at least draw some letters. All right, pause if you need to. Live group, thank you so much for what you're putting in. Keep going. I do want to come back. Oops, that is not what I meant to do at all. I want to come back briefly to that last question for just a moment. Just because I got a great comment, and thank you again for this. Well, one statement changed the whole answer, even if the table says he would, but that statement's a game changer. Mm-hmm. And great comment, partly because I think that's the light bulb going on for you personally. That in real life, if somebody gives me a table and a blob of text, my eyes are going to the table. I'm going to focus on the table, pull the data out of it my own way. Frankly, I'm not sure I'm really going to read the blurb. That's how I process information. I'm not going to read the blurb unless I have to. The table's easier. And I think that's our instinct. And you want to fight that instinct because so much of the time, yeah, the money's in the passage. And if you pay attention to every little stipulation in there, completely changes it. And you can understand the table, the graph, whatever it might be on Data Insights perfectly. And then you miss a couple words in the text that looks uninteresting and you're screwed. So this is a huge area where you can have a comparative advantage versus a lot of other people applying to school. Most people don't focus on this at all. So if this is something you work on, it is not sexy. If it's something you work on, you're going to get better because the error rate with this stuff is huge. Okay, back to this guy. So we got this dance show thing, and we've got a few different criteria. We know that Requiem is going to be before whatever the S is, smooth step, and we know that whatever the U is, unleashed will be before trampoline, but there's going to be at least one other thing in between, and Waltzy's not going to come at the end, and we want to know which one can't be second, which one can't be third. Now, this, again, all sorts of variety in these. I don't want you to focus too much on exactly what I do for this one. It's kind of the general concept that sometimes you look at this, and what I see a lot of students doing is they kind of go, well, let me just think about this, have a little strokey beard meeting. Let me see what I can do. Play with it a little bit. Play with it, draw pictures, draw out the different varieties, the different permutations if you'd like, and see what happens. If nothing emerges for you within a minute or a minute and a half or whatever, and you just feel overwhelmed, great, guess and move on. Most of you won't get through 20 questions comfortably in 45 minutes. But I see a lot of reluctance to be organized with the information. People get squirrely and they don't organize their information. And this is a genre of question on Data Insights, very common, that I would kind of boil down to: organize your information and good things will happen. Okay, not necessarily the most elegant thing to try to explain live on a whiteboard, but I'm going to do my best. Okay, we know that R comes immediately before S. So it's kind of like you have sort of R, S as a little, if I'm kind of listing downward as the order, RS is kind of a little unit that's going to go together. And then we've got U, and then we know we have something in between U and T, but we've got U, something, and T. Okay, there's only so many things that could go in here, right? So you could have W in there, or you could have RS in there, or you could have all those things in there. Just three options, really. So it's sticking Waltzy in there, it's sticking R and S together in there, or it's sticking all three in there. So what you can do, and I'm going to do this kind of the maximal way that's a little bit slower, because it's still really not that bad. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to write down every possibility, and that's it. So what if, let's start with the possibility that R and S is what goes in there and Waltzy does not. So possibility number one is going to be that we have Waltzy at the top, because Waltzy can't come at the end. And then we're going to have U, and then between U and T, we've got R and S. And then we've got T at the end. Okay, so that's your order. Notice that spells Wurst, which is the German word for sausage. I like food. Okay, that's one possibility. Second possibility, give myself a little more space. What if it's Waltzy in there? What if that's the W? And then the RS can come at the beginning or at the end. So you could have RS, UWT, or we could just flip these around. The RNS goes at the end. UWT, so this is number 3, UWT, RS. And now our only other possibility is, what if everything goes in between U and T? So the W is in there somewhere, so you get possibility number 4. So you've got U and T at the end, and then what do you have in the middle? One possibility is you have Waltzy first, and then Requiem and Smooth Step, and the other possibility is we just switch these around. So we get U first, then your R, then your S, then your W, then your T. Now, if you're sitting here watching this and going, well, that's a pain in the ass, pardon my language, you're correct, it is. It also didn't take me that long. And sometimes this is fine. And I want you to not be afraid to do it. But if you're going to do it carefully, do it thoughtfully. And now we're in great shape because we can look at this and go, well, everything, what is not second? Well, it's not trampoline. So T is not second. And what's not third? Not waltzy. And that's it. Now, the holy grail here is if you can see the shortcuts, fantastic. We are running out of time, so I'm not going to show you those because they're not necessarily applicable to some other question. So what I want you to do is be aware that when you get these ordering questions, these logic games questions, sometimes a lot of the game is just making sure you work with it, draw yourself some pictures, put things in order, get a feel for it. And a lot of the time, there just aren't that many different possibilities, and you're going to see the answer just by doing it the slow way. But a lot of the time, yes, there is a shortcut that is going to be unique to that question. Here, I think there is. I think you can kind of logically figure out that trampoline can't be second because there are always two things before trampoline, right? There's always unleashed, and there's always something between unleashed and trampoline. So you might have been able to get to this one, certainly, right off the bat, just logically. So bottom line here, don't be afraid to draw the pictures. Don't be afraid to be systematic with them. If you're going to do it, be careful with it. But the mindset I always want you to have is, yeah, but if I can see a logical shortcut like we have for this one, jump on it. And some questions have those shortcuts, some don't, but don't be afraid to draw those pictures. Now, this is a really, really common, broad genre of questions, and they all look a little bit different. So let me give you another one real quick here. We're not going to go through this just because we're running short of time. I want to get you out of here by the hour mark. I've got 6 minutes. So live people, if you have more questions, toss them in now. Now's your chance because I do want to talk about time management as we wrap up. And actually, I just saw a question pop up that I think is excellent. Yeah, and this, great question. Can you go option by option eliminating instead of writing all possibilities? Absolutely. And that's kind of what I was referring to at the end. So I showed you the slow way, partly to make the point that, yeah, it's a tool. Sometimes it's not that bad. Even the slow way here, you can get through it in 2.5 minutes without too much of a problem. As long as you're systematic and you're really precise with your language, it's not so bad. But depending on the way the question's written, sometimes you can look at the answer choices and just go, yeah, I can see that it's not these three or not these four. Here again, I mean, we could talk about a logical shortcut for the second one too. I'm not going to get into that in the interest of time. But here, yeah, I mean, you could just kind of think through and go, well, I know that trampoline's always third, fourth, or fifth. It has to be. So I can answer that without writing everything out. So my point isn't always write things out, always write everything out. That's not the point. That is a tool. It is a tool that can really help you. If you're going to do it systematically. But then if you see a better way for that particular context of that particular question, yes, by all means do it. So if those answer choices help you on that question, do it. Here, I'm not so sure that would work very well in this particular question, but the next one it might. So absolutely, use the answer choices because sometimes you can just kind of eyeball them and go, well, I know it's not those four, and I've got my answer. Okay. Briefly here, 4 minutes left. We're not going to go through this one. This is a multi-source reasoning, and it's the same sort of feel as that last one we did. Yeah, the details are different. It's an office, and you got a bunch of people, and there's all this stuff about who has to sit next to who, and blah, 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 what kind of person gets an office, and who gets a cubicle, blah, blah, blah. These can be intimidating, but I swear they're not that bad. They are always answerable in a reasonable amount of time. If you need to draw the picture, start writing out the possibilities, it will eventually work. If you can see a shortcut, obviously, even better. But don't be afraid to draw those pictures. And if you're going to do it, do it. Don't get squirrely about it. Don't have to do it. Don't forget to read the details, because if you miss one of those little rules that's in there, that's the kiss of death. Okay. Not going to go through this. Pretty fun one as these things go, but don't have time for it. Okay. Question number 5 we get all the time is flowcharts are weird. Yeah, they're kind of weird. They feel kind of intimidating. If we had more time, I would go through this one. You are welcome to go find it on the GMAT Club forum. Plenty of good discussion on this one. I'm going to say one thing about it for those of you who decide to go tackle it on your own time. Again, precision of reading. And part of what happens here is that the answer feels very unsatisfying, very unsatisfying. And that's another feature. It feels too obvious to be the right answer for some people, may or may not to you personally. But I find this to be an interesting kind of example of what are we doing? This is a really silly flowchart. Who draws a flowchart of their website like this? This is silly. And what they end up asking for might strike you as silly as well. But be disciplined. Give them exactly what they asked for. Exactly. You drop the wrong word in the wrong place, you're in trouble. Otherwise, it's easy. Most people miss this question because they miss that one word. And that is what, unfortunately, verbal-based data insights is often all about, sadly. Okay, last question. How do we get faster on data insights? I want to wrap up with that the last couple minutes here. And apologies for the mess I have behind me on the board. Again, I can't say this enough. Part of your mindset on data insights has to be, I'm gonna bail when I flail. It is time pressured for most of you. If you are a freak of nature, maybe you can get through comfortably. Look, I've got some brilliant people who work with me at GMAT Ninja as tutors, and most of them find it really time pressure on data insights. It's true for everybody. It's adaptive. The better you do, the harder the questions get. Harder it is to finish on time. I want you to control your timing. 15, 16, maybe 18 or 19 questions done carefully. If a question is over your head, walk away, let it go. Absolutely crucial. Do the questions well where you see a path forward. If you don't see a path forward, get out of there. Second, there's actually less going on here than it seems a lot of the time. Like there's a lot of variety on data insights, and some people just get intimidated by the mountain of stuff. But if you're really disciplined in your approach and you're always asking the question on these verbal-based ones, their words are mine, their words are mine. Don't skip the text. Make sure you catch those little details, because the difference between having a great performance on verbal-based data insights and not having a great performance, and again, it's half your questions on data insights, the difference between great and not so great is you drop a couple words in the wrong places is the difference. That's really it. So I want you to be really attuned to that stuff. And if you're going to do a question, do it systematically. Have a good, clean process. Double check your work. Don't do what I did with that question about the at most 1 versus at most 3. Don't do that. Double check all your work. And that's what pays off. Let go of the ones that are going to take you an eternity. When you get stuck, let it go. Very few people can do 20 questions systematically in that time. But if you choose to do the question, check your work, reread the question twice. Make sure you're not dropping those modifiers here and there, because that is it. That's the whole game. Almost all the questions I flashed at you or we did here, these are almost all questions that are considered hard because most people miss them. The content itself is not hard on these, and that's the point. What makes it hard? You guys miss it. Why do you miss it? You misread one word. That's why you're missing them. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Folks who joined live, thank you so much for all of your feedback. Really love it. We will be back in a couple weeks for another live one. It's a holiday is about to hit here. Happy holidays, everybody who celebrates anything this time of year. And we will be back. I think Quant is coming up next in a couple weeks in January. So come join us live for that. If you enjoyed it, smash the like, smash the subscribe button. Please tell a friend. I want more people here live. I don't care if you watch it later, but please watch live. We love having people here. So if you have friends who would enjoy this, would enjoy asking questions, please invite them along. All right. Thanks, everybody, and have fun studying.